This is car YouTuber standard equipment. Comes with a starter kit these days. Well, hello and welcome back to Lap of the World. I'm Richard, and if this is your first time watching, this is the channel in which I'm documenting my attempt to drive every racetrack in the world. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, or sounds at least ripe enough with schadenfreude to pick your interests, go ahead and click the subscribe button down here. That way you'll get a notification anytime I'm able to check another track off my list, or if I publish a video like today, which, although we're not at a circuit, might actually be more track related than you think. Jumping right in, a couple of videos ago, I talked about having these new seat covers installed in the NSX, just to kind of bring the interior back up to the standard that it should be for a car of this caliber. And in fact, since then, my wife and I have actually had a chance to enjoy and appreciate them on a long mountain drive with some of our friends and fellow NSX owners over this past weekend. Now that video is forthcoming, but today we are here to talk about neither seat covers nor mountain driving, but rather a really simple, cheap, but still effective way to mount a fire extinguisher in your first generation NSX, or really any other car where the seats similarly affix to the vehicle. I would like to pause for a moment right now, though, and have you appreciate the level of clickbait that I could have inflicted on you at this point in time. We are talking about fire extinguishers in a car YouTube video. Just saying. So with no mention of Salomondrin, Hoovie, or Parker, except that I just now did to say that I didn't, let's get on to how to put a fire extinguisher in your NSX or potentially some other car. Alright, so we've got the driver's seat fully installed and the passenger seat is in position. Now before I bolt the passenger seat all the way down though, I did want to touch on one other thing I do over here. And that involves this guy. This is car YouTuber standard equipment. Comes with a starter kit these days after several high-profile incidents. But no, I'm kidding. So I originally put this in my car to comply with NASA time trial regulations. But I wanted to point it out because it is one of the really one of the simplest and cheapest ways to install a fire extinguisher in the NSX. Now, I'll get to some of the benefits and detriments, but let me get it in position and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So now I have it approximately in position, and I'll just show you what this is. I mean, all this is, as you could see earlier, is probably a 2-inch by 1/4-inch aluminum stock that's been bent, and you could probably procure that at a hardware store or online and bend it on a vise in your house and drill a few holes in it. It's got a mounting hole down here. Now what the shop that I had put this in, they were kind of clever and they installed a stud down here where there would normally be a bolt, and that's because the clearance between this little flange here and the elbow here it's kind of difficult to get the bolt in position with a ratchet from there, so it works out a little better this way. But it's super simple. All it does is it just sort of threads in there and then sits on the floor. So this isn't going anywhere. That's heavy enough stock, and it's a big enough bolt and stud and nut. It has passed every NASA tech inspection that I've put it through. So, and I have confidence that it's secure there. And this is you'll note as well, from the extinguisher standpoint, this is old school halon. You can't get that anymore. You have to, nowadays you get a halotron, which is the sort of, I don't know what you call that, environmentally friendly version. But the key point is it's a gas instead of a dry chemical or liquid, which means it puts out fires of all types and is, doesn't leave any, doesn't have a electrical risk, and doesn't leave any corrosive powder or residue behind once it's actually been discharged. So, having had to spend about a month vacuuming dry chemical residue out of an old 308 GT4 Dino, probably a couple of decades ago at this point, I can appreciate that. So yeah, the only detriment to this way of doing it is super cheap. It doesn't cost you, it costs next to nothing to install once you have the extinguisher, but it does limit the seat travel forward. So, if you're tall, or if you have tall passengers, not a problem. If you're wanting to store stuff behind your seat or install stuff behind the seat, then you don't get a lot of clearance back here. Anyway, yeah, so, you know, it's kind of one of those things I keep in the car for regulation as well as for peace of mind. You know, I guess procedurally, if your car is on fire, the first step should be to get out of it. But, you know, that failing if you're stuck in the car, or if it's not that big of a fire and you feel that you can spend the extra split second to unlimber the fire extinguisher on your way out the door, it can definitely either save your life or your car. I guess one of the ways that I always kind of am cognizant that I could need to use the fire extinguisher is for the other poor guy. You know, if I was on a drive or, you know, in some rare situation on the track. You know, on the track it's a little safer. You know, lots of people are kind of, no, well, probably nobody watching this channel, but the general public probably thinks it's, oh yeah, it's so dangerous on track. Well, yeah, no. It's not really, though, because everybody's going the same direction. Generally, everybody has some qualification to be there. And you have a bunch of corner workers standing around with fire extinguishers and first aid equipment, such that if you do make a hash of it, they're, you know, on the spot. But, yeah, no, it's kind of one of those things. Like, multiple uses, you could save your own bacon or somebody else's, just by virtue of spending a few bucks to, you know, keep one in the car. Especially since it's generally out of the way. I don't, you know... I will say in an NSX, one of the sort of ninja perks of doing it this way is this little section down here makes a perfect cup holder or, you know, bottle holder for a water bottle or something like that. Anyway, pro tips, that's all I got on this. I'm going to get to finishing up the install and we'll wrap it up. And there you have it. That's probably one of the simplest and least expensive ways to effectively install a fire extinguisher in your first generation NSX, or really any other car where the seats you know, are installed the same way. I have left links in the description just to some Amazon stuff where you can get the same size flat aluminum flat bar as well as the current day equivalent of the fire extinguisher. So it's now Halotron instead of Halon, but it's the same gas-based, not residue-leaving, non-corrosive extinguisher media. But, yeah, and fire extinguishers are one of those things, not to jinx myself or anybody else, but, you know, you install one of them hoping you never have to use it, but you understand that if it ever does come to that, then you could be potentially saving, you know, your car or somebody else's, or, you know, somebody else's life or your own for that matter. So it's really never a bad plan. And if you've considered it before and just didn't know how to go about it until now, or if you hadn't considered it and now you think it's a good plan, then my job here is done. And I think we're calling it a video at that point in time. I hope you found it informative, if not entertaining. Now, coming up next on Lap of the World, we will have a bunch of NSXs horsing around in the mountains, as well as probably some different color wheels on a Gallardo. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, or if you want a notification anytime I'm able to get back to a racetrack eventually, then click the subscribe button. And I guess for today, I'm Richard, this is Lap of the World, and I will see you in the next video, if not at the track.